I'm a big passionate believer of collective impact. I'm co-chair of the Logan Together movement around, in the early childhood space. And one of the biggest things I say is remuneration. For a community leader to be here, they have to say no to a job. They have to organise childcare, all the assets community have and to give. So designing programs and policies with community, and not just to enter, but to maintain.
So, Kenny, it's so good to have you on Empowered Voices Amplified. And I know you were promoted.
Yeah, so I guess I advocated very strongly for us to have our family and early years area coming together and the work we've been doing in the community space. And I think I advocated so strongly that they went, here, you can lead that. And so it's really great. I love working families and children and young people. So it's a great opportunity to really showcase the work that we're doing in this space.
Can you, just to fill me in, because Kenny and I have just met this evening, so would you mind just maybe backtracking a little bit, explaining to me what you do and how you guys know each other?
Sure. I'm happy to do that. My full name is Kenny Duke. Actually, my full name is Irma Kenny Duke Lopez.
I love it.
But I'm known by my middle name, Kenny, and I work for SSI, an organisation that does a lot of work in settlement, but also social services across Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. And I guess just a little bit about me, originally from El Salvador. So my family came as refugees through the Civil War, and then I kind of grew up in the multicultural space and then never left it, studied and work in that area. So I work very closely with community because I also have my own community and know how important it is to be connected to culture and identity.
Very much so. And how did you lovely ladies come across each other?
African Professionals of Australia.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it was at the breakfast events, and since then I've really just followed your journey. And at Logan, you were at the Thrive Logan workshop as well.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, you were there, and I loved your contribution. And obviously LinkedIn is so great. Yeah. I feel I know so many people just through LinkedIn interactions.
That's correct. Like just the networking and getting to know what people really, do or what they're passionate about. I think it comes out a lot in LinkedIn. Yeah, so it's been lovely getting to know you and APA and the work that you've been doing. I work very closely, obviously, with community and the differential groups. And I think there's definitely an area that could be done more. It's in that professionals network. So I've really enjoyed seeing how, you're amplifying voices in that space and really giving that opportunity for young people to see what they can do and achieve through mentors through that network. So it's great connecting with you and Arodi and Maggie and all the committee and the great work that they do.
Yeah, they are. It's a great bunch. It's a great bunch. And Sandra, you've been to one. I think you've been to a breakfast.
Just one of the breakfasts, and then I went to Chicks in Pink or a Chicks.
Oh yes,
business Chicks event also, which was.
I love that Chicks in Pink.
Chicks in Pink. There was a lot of pink that day. I know. Chicks in Pink is something different. A business chicks networking event as well, with the beautiful bunch of ladies from APA. So a fantastic organisation, and there's real heart there and real community, which is just amazing. What I've noticed is people are not afraid or not reticent to give back and to give out and to share with each other, share with their communities to just make things, better for everybody. It's generous and giving. I think that possibly is cultural as well, just very much giving back to whoever needs it without counting costs and what have you. And it's a fantastic organisation to just be on the periphery of, at least to be part of, and to feel like a little welcome guest when I do join in with activities. It's great.
Yeah. And Kenny, you said that you've been doing a lot of community work and been in multicultural and all of that. What Like, what sort of, in your upbringing, what do you think were the key drivers that led you to just be doing the sort of work that you're doing now?
Well, I often joke because I say that I've been working in this space since I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I think it's that my journey is not that different to others, where you're spending a lot of time, explaining things to your parents of how it works. But also we had a cultural dance group, the Salvadorian dance group. So we used to be part of, I don't know if you remember the Warwana parade in the city. Yeah. So we used to, I think from a very young age, we were immersed a lot in multicultural organizations and what happens when you arrive. And we were one of the first families that arrived from El Salvador to Logan. And so as newer families came, we were kind of just that, mentor family. And so we just always grew with the nature of helping others. My mum was a bicultural worker. And so it was just, like I said, it was predestined for me when I finished high school and went to university and, did human services. And then I just naturally went, hi, Gail, like, do you have placement? Can I do my placement at Access? And so that's how I started my journey. And, Gail was obviously a big mentor in my life growing up as well. And so seeing her, Gail, if those don't know, Gail Kerr, I doubt you don't know her, but it was just like having mentors like her really helped me go, well, I could actually be doing something to help others, but do something meaningful in my work. Yeah, so I just started in youth development and then went into settlement and didn't look back, always stayed working in the multicultural space and now working in SSI.
Fantastic. It's amazing how one thing always leads to another in a career. People always ask me, or occasionally ask me, where, how did you get to where you are in your career? And it's to me, it's just like one experience leading to another one and leading into another one, and it builds and it grows. And it's not till you look back and you go, oh, actually, that was my career. It was just a series of jobs until suddenly there was a pattern comes out of it. And
that's right.
It has been a career, and it's, you've obviously forged a really fantastic career for yourself.
Well, I think it's also the curiosity of, like, for example, my dad's background, he is an architect in his country. And I think the curiosity of, like, well, why are you working as a taxi driver? Like, what's wrong with that, And there was a lot of whys, I think, growing up and seeing things roll out in community and seeing some of the people struggle, with mental health and getting their skills recognized. And so much grassroots issues start to come up and you realize them and you go, what's, I come from a very strong social justice lens and go, well, why is that a struggle? And so I think that curiosity led me towards this pathway as well, of trying to understand, what's the complexity of our system that doesn't let people succeed when, if anything, they're bringing some overseas expertise and, multiple languages. Like, these are all strengths that I see and richness to cultural part of Australia. Like, why is those struggles there? And so I think that really seed was planted very early in me, and that's what's kept me exploring, through employment and training, and then going back to settlement, then going back to community, really trying to understand where the systems barriers are and where we, to be honest, need to do more around that systems change approach and really highlight where those trouble points are for them, because it's the most disheartening thing hearing such successful people working in jobs that is not really filling their cup because they've had careers in this space and they want to give back and they really want to share their knowledge and skills, but they're not able to practice their engineering background, or they're not able, like my father, really fulfill his career here. So I am very passionate about trying to lead systems change and, making sure that we change that at least moving forward, and we create more opportunities and really highlight those strengths that I think, frankly, employers are missing when we don't connect people from overseas in their professions and qualifications. Yeah.
That's a very important topic. And I know Sandra and I'm sure you saw we both set up really straight because this...
Yes.
This is a topic which Liz Irvine has spoken about. Debbie spoke extensively about that as well, where, we've got engineers, scientists, people with incredible knowledge, scientists, all those people with incredible knowledge who are Uber drivers. And look, there's nothing wrong with being an Uber driver if that's what you choose. But if you're doing it for survival because there's no other option, then that's a problem.
That is.
What practical ways do you think we can, what can be practically done? And why is it so hard? Why is it so hard?
Look, the practical elements that I've seen where the struggle is recognition of prior learning. So really understanding, I just came from a conference that we were part of in New South Wales. I'm part of I'm a Queensland partner for the governance board of MYAN, which is Multicultural Youth Advocacy Network. And we were hearing from a youth ambassador from Victoria with extensive, again, full engineering degree, came from Syria, was so ready to get into engineering and faced so many barriers for many years. And now she, as a young person, is creating, opportunities for other engineers now that she's working in that space to just help them navigate it. But she just explained how she really struggled to even get people to understand the level of university she did and how, it's as equally as strong, if not better, those first world considered university from Kingdom or States. It's this struggle of understanding how a degree over there can also be relevant here. So there's something we could be doing more in that space. And I know there are some efforts being put towards that. I know as an organisation, we try to really help that. But the other part that I've also seen boards of registrations, like Engineering Australia, what are their requirements, what are their standards, particularly, with the IELTS examination and nursing. I know that has been a barrier for some people to practice nursing, even when they have proved competency through their degrees and done their placement hours, they still need to continue to prove themselves, and not just to enter but to maintain their jobs or maintain registrations, continuously sit like English language tests. So there's not much recognition of competency, even if our degrees, and you've completed our degrees and you've done your placement, why is that not enough for you to go then become a registered nurse? Why? Because you did not complete year 12 here, you need to still go and do an IELTS test, which is a private test you need to pay for, and if you're in a regional area, you need to travel to major cities to participate in that. And there's just these things that we understand the root causes, and I'm sure community understand the root causes. And what we need to make sure is when there's consultations or considerations or submissions from government around this, that they're actually talking to those who are experiencing these barriers, and they can tell you straight away where those blockages are and how it can be fixed. So I think reinforcing the importance of talking to community, talking to those who are struggling to get into their qualifications, and where has that struggle been? Where's that lack of information? Where's that connection? So that we get it right. We have to get it right, especially because these are areas where there's dire need for workforce. And I know employers themselves get frustrated and going, well, I want to be able to tap into this resource as well. We know we are losing, lots of money. Millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars of talent there, the workforce that we're not tapping into.
There needs to be policy changes. There'd have to be. I was speaking to a cousin recently who's from overseas. They've been holidaying with us, and he's a senior doctor at consultant level in the UK, had his qualifications over there. And even he, when they considered moving to Australia and coming over, and his wife is a highly qualified nurse, and both of them were also required to resit or restudy to measure up, or to at least justify their qualifications. And he just went, you're not going to do it, basically.
Well, especially because you're competing it with a worldwide demand. So it's going, if Australia's too hard, well, I'll just go somewhere else, and that's not addressing our concerns here in Australia. And so, I know SSI has definitely done some work. There's a report called $1 Billion Benefit where it does call to action, doing more in this space and tap into. And I know recently there's been a lot of inquiries into skills recognition and migration pathways. So I definitely think they're listening and they're understanding, but they still kind of go, Kenny, we really want to understand where that pain point is. Like, can you point that out to us? So I think that's where, those stories of people trying that, like I said, I definitely know the IELTS part has become a big barrier for them. And it's not about the English. It's they're more than happy to sit through English tests. It's more about the fact that the level of standard they're required to achieve, I don't even think I'm confident I would pass, and does that really relate to competence in the work field? And if you've proven it through your degree and through your recognition of prior learning, and that's sufficient for me or you, then why isn't it sufficient for them? And I think that's where we can definitely do more. And I think the boards and registrations need to look in and go, are we doing the best to make sure we're helping these people transition into workforce where we can benefit from their skills? Yeah.
And this is
why someone out there is listening.
Yeah. And this is what we call systemic. It's a systemic barrier, and it's within the system, and these systems and processes are 100 years old. Like, I don't know how old they are, but they are old, and they probably worked for something else at a period in time. But times have evolved, people have evolved, knowledge, skill transfer, all those things have evolved. And I'll tell you this, I did write IELTS exam. So that was part of the skilled migrant professional move to Australia. That was a requirement. And the test in itself, I'm telling you, no one speaks like that. No one writes like that. No one listens in that way. Like, the English is so formal and like old English. Like, no one talks like that. And then you come to Australia and people say, "Good day, mate." And you're like, "What?" And they're saying, "First of the South." Like, it doesn't, the test in itself is so removed to the reality that you then face when you come to Australia. So again, that's something that that's something that needs to be looked at. But I like what you said, Kenny, earlier about getting communities, like the people that are impacted, involved in policy making, because at times, and this is interesting because we're approaching International Women's Month, because it's not a day anymore, it's a whole month. And we talk about, there's the story, I've told Sandra this before, but there's this story, I think it was in one of the African countries, I will not name and shame, in one of the African countries where there was a group of 8 men who were, like, it was convened, and these 8 men were responsible for solving young girls' transition into teenagehood. And it's 8 men. And these are all 50s, 60s. What do they know about girls transitioning from being a girl into teen? Like, does that make sense? And I always think of that analogy because I see a lot here in Australia where people will have diversity and inclusion teams, but they are all white Caucasian people. Yes. It's diversity and inclusion. And then you have people that are talking about policies like this, policies such as this. But the people sitting around the table have no idea what's involved when refugees come to Australia, skilled, and they'll be skilled. Or when skilled migrants come to Australia, that understanding is not there. So, but the challenge I have, and this is very long-winded and long, the challenge I have is when we ask people, so you've got people that have come into Australia, they can't get a job in their chosen profession, so they go into service-based work, right? So that means they are working 10 hours a day and all that. So when you then hold a session on, let's help, let's come up with policy, they are not going to turn up, or that's a systemic barrier. They are not going to turn up because they're at work. But if we make those sessions compensated, if we say, come to the session and we'll pay you 3 hours worth or 4 hours worth of your wage, then we'll have real people being impacted by these policies and everything else. But if we're going to say, come and spend 4 hours with us, and there's no financial benefit, no one's coming.
Absolutely. And that's some really strong points that I try to really raise when it comes to working with community. You know, I'm a big, passionate believer of collective impact. I'm co-chair of the Logan Together movement around, you know, in the early childhood space. And one of the biggest things I say is remuneration. You know, for a community leader to be here, they have to say no to a job. They have to organize childcare. They have to, you know, these are all things that someone would be getting paid for their expertise. So why are we not recognizing cultural expertise? Why are we not recognizing community expertise or the lived experience expertise? I always advocate for remuneration. I always advocate for child minding if we're talking to mothers. There's so many things that ensures that we are hearing the voices, but not just hearing the voices, because what happens a lot is they'll consult and they'll listen to the issues, but they still make decisions as to how that policy is going to be rolled out. They think they've understood the problem, but where I feel like there needs to be more work done is around the design. And I'm starting to step away from the co-design because I also see sometimes that is tokenistic in a way when they say, okay, we're going to co-design, but they come with a very controlled, can you just look at this and give us feedback on this? No, design. Like we have so much strengths in the grassroots level, comes across from networking, from community, from all the assets community have and to give. So designing programs and policies with community on the ground, we just know that has made a change. And I've seen that a lot in the early childhood space in regards to the work we've done with Logan Together, where they will go, what would you like to see for your children? What would you like to see happen for your children? And sit there and work through that. And then that be highlighted to government and go, this is how this will work for our community. And we've seen some amazing things come out of that, like Village Connect, for example. You know, it's a completely Pacifica run organization. They are doing it their way. They are running in circles. They are involving elders and leaders in those conversations. We've seen it with some of the work in the African villages. Like there's definitely models there that are working and tapping into community and also really, really empowering generally communities to do what's best for their children and the individuals that are needing that support. But we still haven't seen that roll out in larger scales, and they tend to be very pilot and pocketed and no guarantee. So there's definitely a merge, and I can understand the risks around when you're talking about tax dollars money, but if you really want to change things like poverty, or you really want to change things for mothers and working mums, then it just makes sense to tap into lived experience. And that's what we are all about, is about going, if you are talking about matters with young people, where are the young people at the table? If you're talking about matters around professionals, where are the professionals around the table?
Yes.
You know, and that's who needs to be there. If we're talking about mothers, where are the mothers at the table? You know, and are we making it accessible for them to be here at the table? And are we speaking their language? You know, because that's the other thing, is I've often invited community to the table and then I'm embarrassed with the language that's being used, and how, because the power balance is real. And if you can't talk in everyday terms and you're going to use acronyms and you're going to use this and that, it will disempower that person on that table. So it's about, these are the type of things going, well, let's connect as humans. Let's really make policies that work and make sure that everyone is going to do well through this, not just those who can know how to navigate the system, or those who can use the digital platform. They're going to succeed. But what about those who can't use digital platform? Those who can transport themselves to a remote place to participate at that table, but those who can't. So that equity lens really needs to be approached when it comes to designing programs and policy.
Lots to think about there. Lots and lots to think about. Yeah, absolutely. But everything is so relevant, and potentially people haven't really thought things quite so thoroughly. You mentioned about the villages and rolling it out further. Do you think that small village model would roll out further, and how it would? Or does it need to stay in those little niche areas, but just be more of those rolled out?
And then I think the collective impact model talks around a lot place-based, and I think when one of the terms I think I've heard so much, particularly in the last 3 months, is large scale. How can we large scale this? How can it be sustainable? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Like, every community looks different. You can't compare Logan to Ipswich. You can't compare Brisbane to Ipswich. You can't compare Toowoomba to, so some of those rollout large scale might work. Some won't. So that's where you need that intersect between grassroots of that real bottom-up approach and informed from a local lens. And then, in some cases, depending on what you roll out, yes, there could be some that could be replicable in other areas. I think it's that two-way learning, and we have to be open to learning. We have to be open to learning as individuals, as I don't pretend to know it all. My director always say, be curious, and I really lead with that, because I go, okay, I don't understand this bit, and that's okay that I don't understand it. Let's inquire more in this, and let's try and find out a little bit more. And I'll call Esperance, I'll call Eric, I'll call I'm seeing what's and so just reaching out, connecting, understanding. But if you've got those connections, you can do that. But what I'm also seeing is communities burnt out. Trust is going, because the amount of consultations, the amount of back and forth, and then the same thing just gets rolled out. Trust is now becoming an issue. That's fair. Because if your knowledge keeps being tapped on, but you're not seeing any results, I'd be the same, and that's okay, because I tell them, it's okay. It's okay to be protective of your knowledge. You should be, because you know a lot. So what are we going to do as a society? What is government going to do as a society to recognize they need to earn trust before someone gives out all their information of how to do things best? But yeah, I think there's a two-way learning always, and I don't think you can just take something and put it somewhere else and expect it to work the same. That is not realistic either.
There's a lot of, you mentioned curiosity and learning, and I think there's also a lot of unlearning to be done. There are a lot of preconceived notions and ideas about how, the moment you say multicultural, I feel the moment you say that, there's an expectation of mediocrity, to be honest. And I've seen how people react to the term and the expectations of that. I'll give an example. So if you say multicultural to me, I get an image of richness, and because I know so many people, I mean, we're all multicultural, right? But I know so many individuals of ethnic backgrounds that are excellent and do amazing things. But when speaking to someone about multiculturalism, there's this perception of, not good enough. They need a hand up. They need not even a hand up, like what is it called?
Hand
it just
held,
needs to be a handout, exactly. Yes. And I say this like from I want to really get your perspective on this. And the reason I'm saying this is last year I got involved in a lot of community initiatives, consultation after consultation after consultation. I think in a week I was spending more than 10 hours in consultations, all of them not paid. They were all unpaid. And I had to come to a decision to step back, because I was growing my business at the same time.
Yeah.
And one of the things, we're talking about mentoring young women and young boys of African background. Was it just African? It was multicultural, because we like this term in Australia. It was multicultural background. And one of the men who was there, an elderly white man, I shouldn't say elderly. He wasn't an elderly white man. He was a middle-aged white man. And he said, in mentoring, he's been mentoring multicultural children for over 5 years now. And what he says to me is, I always want to make sure that they've got realistic expectations. So I was curious and I asked, what do you mean? And he said one of the mentees that he had on board, and he's paid for this. One of the mentees said they wanted to be an architect. And he told them, be realistic with your expectations. You can't be an architect. Maybe you need to look into welding, into mechanic stuff, and he was proud of saying this and saying, I redirected this young man because he was disillusioned. I will not say what my reaction to that was. It was not good. But, it's stuff like that, Kenny. Like, how can we make sure that we've got mentors in place that are not dream destroyers?
Yes. And I think that also comes with cultural competence as well, because unfortunately there's a lot of well-meaning individuals that go, I want to help. And but they're not really understanding that by sometimes saying these things are actually disempowering and discouraging, and in some cases being a little bit, racially biased, and not realizing they're putting it in. They're inserting it, their notion or preconceived notion of what, multicultural young people can do, and this is a problem, is that this is why we have to remove that and see each person as an individual and see them, your background can definitely add richness in so many different ways. Even if you are from a refugee background and you've come through a refugee journey, what does that tell me about that person? If you've come from like I said, that stop seeing it as a deficit, start to see it as something, as those richness that are coming through. Notion of we got to help others, we got to help those who are less fortunate, and that goes on to young people. And I have seen so many times that their pathways change and they start to believe that this is true. And they go, oh no, I can't do that because my teacher said I couldn't do that. No, I can't do that because the transition pathway person said I can't do that, or the counselor said that I can't do that. I've heard that over and over again, and inadvertently starting to cause a lot of disengagement of young people in school. Because, if we look at any sort of root causes, it normally comes from a mentor they looked up to. They let them down or told them that they couldn't do something that they could do, and who are we to judge the capacity of an individual? Like, we've seen people turn their life around, just in normal, like I might have not known much English, and within 2 years I mastered English and then went and did my degree and enrolled. There's so much of those stories that I hear all the time. And I just think how fortunate that no one ever stood in that person's way and said, you can't do it. Sometimes that drives you. And you go, well, I'm going to prove to them that I can. And I've heard a lot of those stories, and I have a lot of young people I work with that have those stories and go, I wanted to prove them wrong, that I could do it, Kenny. But then there's others that unfortunately that light kind of goes off, and that goes, I'm just going to stay in this, part-time job that I was doing, and I'll keep doing that because, I was dreaming to think that I was going to go to university. And that's so disheartening. Like I just get goosebumps because I just go, that who are you to stop someone's dream? We shouldn't let anybody stop someone's dream, but it's happening a lot. So I do agree. I think we have to be protective in some ways when we have a voice. And that's one of the biggest things I say. If you are going to mentor, if you're going to come in and support or lend a hand, what do you mean when you say, what knowledge are you bringing to the table? What networks are you bringing to the table? How are you going to help that person achieve their dreams? And how are you going, so changing it to, you're not helping them. Like, how are you going to prove that you are a good mentor for someone? And flipping it. And I do think we need to kind of make sure that there are some training out there for well-intended business people or who are going to swoop in and offer their support and go, well, what are you really offering? And is this going to be a good match? You can unpack that so much, but that's just scratching it on the surface, and there's nothing more I detest than breaking someone's dreams. Recently, we've been meeting with some youth leaders around planning a round table. They've been talking about one of the two biggest things that were reported back was mental health impact for young people around those pathway changes, and then discrimination and racism that they've heard, and how that experience has then changed their pathway of where they were going completely, and has caused disengagement in schools, and and we know from there the further on pathways that get chosen. So that's something that they themselves as young people said these are the two biggest things we're facing in our communities, need to address. So we'll be looking at that roundtable, and they'll be bringing up some of those stories, which hopefully kind of gives government a bit more of understanding that we need to really address these root causes that we're seeing in education and in tertiary pathways, and the role a mentor, a teacher can play in these particular instances, and how we can change that from a government perspective, and put more accountability, whether it's cultural competency, whether it's teachers understanding more the different journeys and the impact they can have in someone's life by the things they say.
Wow.
Yeah.
We just need to pause for a moment and just let that sink in.
Yeah.
Look, Kenny, this has been an incredible conversation, and you've touched on so many topics. I feel like we need a part 2 to this. We cannot, we haven't really explored this, and I would love for us to go more in depth. Sandra and I talk about these issues a lot, but one of the things that I'm very passionate about is you can't be what you can't see.
That's
and
right.
While some of us are like, I want to be that even if I can't see it, a lot of young people cannot envision themselves in what they can't see. And we've got a rich community of African professionals in Australia. We've got a rich community of so many successful people in Australia that would be willing to give their time, willing to mentor, and it's just, those pathways. And I hear a lot of, we can't find people like that. I was approached last year to mentor a group of young people, they call them young African boys and girls. But I was being asked to do it for free because it would help my community. And this is a program by one of the richest organizations in Brisbane. Every other program that they have targeted at the private schools are paid. But this particular program for young African boys and girls, I was expected to do it for free. So, it's that inequality even at the stage where I want to help, but you have to treat me fairly and respect my knowledge and time as you're respecting everyone else's time and knowledge. Yeah. Oh.
No, and it is unfortunate that we're seeing more of that instead of less of that. And it's a debate you can have, right? But I have a lot of friends, fellow friends outside of the sector that go, "Oh, we're so progressive, and I'm like, are we really? I beg to differ. I feel like we should be somewhere else already that we're not, and this is definitely one area that needs more work and needs more attention. And I do feel like, leading up to International Women's Day and month, and we have to say that it's got to stop. And what are you doing? And no, I will not participate until this. And it's more, again, about that equity. I see consultants paid thousands of dollars, for carrying out projects. And why does the color of a skin differentiate what I get paid, or what's the expectation from me? And a lot of times people would use that card of the collective culture. Oh, but your communities all help each other out. Is there a collective? But where's my investment in my own skills? And where is that valid? And we can't say anything to that. because I'm paid to do my job. I'm paid to work, and this is what I always say is like, I'm paid to do this work. I always get bless a lot of community leaders go, Kenny, I want to nominate you for this, and I want to nominate you for the work you've done. I said, no, 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 no. It's my job. This is my job. Yes, I bring passion in it. Yes, I bring my lived experience in it. Yes, I'm willing to do the extra hours, but I'm still getting paid. You're not getting paid. You're not getting paid for that endless hours. And when my doors close in my office, we know that the next door that gets knocked on is that community leader. That door doesn't close. That's 24 hours rotating door. When someone needs help, you're the first to call. You're the first there. So this is what I try to work with a lot in government, with services, with NGOs, and any sort of going, that job does not stop here. As soon as you say, I'm going to shut this door, their job continues. So why are we not equally, remunerating or recognizing their skills through the paid? I think that there's definitely more work to do, and I agree with you there. We got to push back, and we got to say, enough is enough. As women, as people from diverse backgrounds, as anyone else with my skill set, I have a right to get paid. I have a right to share my skill set, and it costs money. That's, yeah. So anyway, you can tell I'm passionate about this too.
Absolutely.
But no, it's been really lovely, and thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. I think the more we have honest conversations around this, the more people will listen and learn, and at least take away something from our conversations and go, well, what can I do different? We all have a responsibility in our work, in our lives, to make a little bit of change towards this.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kenny, for your time. And I know Sandra and I reach out for it after this conversation. It's been really, really good. And to our listeners, if you're listening to this and wondering how you can be an active ally, I implore you to look at the people that are training your organizations, at people that you have as mentors and coaches. Are they people that understand the people you have within your organizations? And if they don't, do reach out to Skilled Migrant Professionals Magazine. We know we can connect you with the right people, the right diverse talent that can help your organizations actually achieve real coaching and mentorship that's suited to ethnic backgrounds and everything else that we've been talking about here. And so again, thank you to our listeners who have been tuning into each and every episode of Empowered Voices Amplified. We appreciate you. And thank you, Kenny, for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. And look forward to talking again.
Thanks, Kenny. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.